She stood tall and silent in the center of the great hall, her black armor shining under the silver lights. Her eyes, cold as ice, scanned the alien council seated before her. She was a warrior. She had won 12 battles. She had crushed enemies with her bare hands, and now she was being told to marry a human boy. Unbelievable. The high speaker of her people stood slowly, voice echoing across the marble room. Commander Vera, for peace between our worlds, you will marry the human, chosen by Earth's council. This is not a request. It is your duty. Vera's jaw tightened. You want me, your top warrior, to be given away like a gift to a soft-skinned boy from a weak planet? Peace requires sacrifice, the speaker replied calmly. Vera's fists clenched. Her people were strong, proud, born on a world where gravity was twice that of Earth. Humans were fragile in comparison. She had fought beasts 10 times her size. And now they expected her to be a bride? She turned without another word and left the hall. Her heavy steps echoed in the corridors as she marched toward her ship. Her thoughts burned hotter than any sun anger, insult, confusion. She had trained her whole life for war. And now she would be tied to a boy she had never met? Far across the stars, on a quiet mountain base on Earth, a young human boy sat in silence, watching the skies. His name was Kale. He had no armor, no medals, no titles. He was just a boy, raised among scholars and peacekeepers. But his blood held. Something rare. His mother was once a diplomatic hero, his father a scientist who had saved 3 alien worlds. The council believed that made Kale worthy of representing Earth in this strange peace union. Kale didn't feel worthy. He felt nervous. He had heard the stories. The alien warrior woman he was meant to marry was a legend. Tall, powerful, feared across 5 star systems. Her people were known to crush those they disliked. He couldn't imagine what she must think of him. I hope she doesn't kill me on sight, he joked quietly. The base commander beside him didn't laugh. Kale looked at his simple clothes and the ceremonial robe folded next to him. What if she hates me? Maybe she will, the commander replied. But maybe she'll be curious. Just be yourself. That's all Earth asks. Kale looked up at the stars. I hope myself is enough. The day of the union came fast. Vera stepped onto the landing platform on Earth, greeted by whispers and stares. Even Earth soldiers kept a respectful distance. Her armor reflected the blue sky, and her presence was heavy like a storm. Kale stood at the other end of the platform, trying not to shake Dot. The moment they locked eyes, time seemed to stop. She was everything he expected, taller than him, built like a weapon, expression unreadable. He was not what she expected. He didn't bow like a servant. He didn't tremble or speak foolishly. He simply looked at her, nodded respectfully, and said, "Thank you for coming all this way." Vera raised an eyebrow. "You are the one I'm supposed to marry?" "Yes," Kale said. "My name is Kale. I expected someone louder." "I can be, but I didn't think shouting would help." For a brief second, something strange flickered in her eyes' amusement. The union was done in a quiet garden, surrounded by guards and diplomats. They stood under a tree older than Earth's wars. No long speeches, no music, just one vow each, translated between languages. Kale said, "I vow to honor your path." Vera replied, "I vow to not destroy you." Everyone clapped nervously. That night, they were given a shared room inside the Earth outpost. A soft bed in the center, 2 chairs, 1 light. Vera stepped in first. She looked around, eyes scanning every wall, every shadow. Kale followed, keeping distance. "You can have the bed. I'll take the floor." She didn't reply. She simply sat down in the corner, arms crossed. Kale placed a blanket on the floor. and laid down, not facing her. The silence between them felt like a void, but it wasn't angry. Just uncertain. Before Cale could close his eyes, she spoke. "You didn't look at me like others do." Cale stayed quiet for a moment, then replied softly, "That's because I wasn't told to fear you." She turned slightly in her corner. "Everyone fears me. I don't. Then you're a fool." Cale smiled. "Maybe, but I like who I am." A long silence followed. Then finally, she said something that changed everything. "Good. I hate cowards." Cale whispered, "Then maybe we'll get along." And for the first time in her life, Vera didn't feel completely alone. The room was quiet, except for the soft hum of the air system. Vera sat with her back against the wall, her armor still on. She didn't trust Earth. She didn't trust the humans. And she certainly didn't trust the boy, who was now her husband. Cale lay on the floor, wrapped in a thin blanket. He didn't complain. He didn't speak again. He just watched the ceiling, like he was thinking about 100 things, but none of them were about controlling her. She found that strange. Most males from her world tried to prove something. They would puff their chests, challenge her strength, or talk endlessly to hide their fear. But this human, he said little. And when he spoke, his words felt like calm water, not fire. Outside, thunder rumbled across the sky. A storm had rolled in. Earth's storms were nothing like hers. Here, the air trembled gently. There was no acid rain, no electric winds. Still, the sound brought her mind back to battlefields, back to blood and fire. She closed her eyes, trying to shut out the past. Then she heard it, a soft cough. She turned. Cale was shivering under the thin blanket. The room's climate control had failed. She could see his breath fogging up in the cold. He didn't ask for help. He didn't even look at her. She frowned, confused. On her world, someone in his position would beg. But he simply pulled his arms tighter around himself and tried to sleep. She stood up. He didn't move. She crossed the room and tossed him a thick fur cloak, her battle wrap. He looked up, startled. "I'm okay. Take it," she said flatly. "You're shaking." He slowly sat up, touched the fabric. It was warm, heavy, and it smelled faintly of steel and dust. "Thank you," he whispered. She sat back down, saying nothing. Next morning, Cale woke early. Vera was already outside, standing barefoot on the grass, her hands behind her back, staring into the rising sun. The light made her armor glow like fire. He stepped out quietly, holding 2 steaming cups tea from Gumi. Earth's highlands. She turned her head slightly. "Drink?" He offered. She hesitated, then walked over slowly and took the cup. They drank in silence. Finally, he asked, "Did you sleep at all?" "I don't need much," she said. "Because you're stronger?" She nodded. He smiled. "I figured." Vera narrowed her eyes at him. "What do you think of me?" Cale looked at her carefully. "I think you were never meant to be trapped in a room. You're meant to move, to fight, to choose your path." She blinked, surprised. "Then why do you accept this marriage?" He looked down at his cup. "Because I wanted to prove something too. Not to you, not to anyone else, but to myself. That I can face someone greater than me without being afraid." Her lips twitched. Was that respect? Before she could speak again, a sharp alarm rang through the chew. "Base." Red lights flashed. "Security breach, unknown entity near the eastern sector." Cale turned. Vera was already walking. "Where are you going?" he asked. "To see what kind of threat your planet offers," she replied. They reached the eastern sector in moments. A wild alien beast had escaped a diplomatic transport, 6 feet tall, 4 arms, fangs like blades. Soldiers were shouting. Some were running. One had been knocked unconscious. Kale moved forward, but Vera stepped in front of him. She didn't draw a weapon. She walked toward the beast. Hands open. It snarled, ready to strike. Then she growled low. Deep, a sound from her native tongue that made even the humans freeze. The beast stopped. Its body trembled. Then it lowered its head. Vera reached out and pressed her palm against its scaled skin. It whimpered like a pup. Everyone stood in silence. She turned back to Kale. Your base is full of loud voices and weak hands. Kale smiled. That's why we needed someone like you. Later that night, they returned to their room. The climate control was fixed, the lights softer. She placed her armor in the corner and sat in one of the chairs. Kale handed her another cup of tea. She took it silently. He asked, "Do you hate being here?" She thought for a moment, then said, "I expected chains. Instead, I got a cup of tea." He nodded. "Not what you expected?" "No," she replied. "You're not weak. You're not cruel," he said back. Another long silence followed. Then, softly, she said, "Maybe this union was not a mistake after all." Kale looked at her for the first time. She was looking back, not as a soldier, but as something more. Asterisk. The training field behind the Earth outpost was quiet at dawn. Vera stood alone in the center, her body tall and still, the sun rising behind her. The cool wind moved through the trees, but she didn't feel it. Her focus was total. In one motion. She drew her blade. It hummed as it cut through the air sharp, fast, deadly. Her hands moved like lightning, each strike powerful enough to crack steel. She danced across the grass, her armor left behind. This was her real clothing strength, speed, control. She didn't know she was being watched. Kale stood behind the window, silently holding a data tablet. He didn't interrupt. He didn't even breathe too loud. He just watched and wondered. He had never seen anything like her. She moved like a storm with discipline. Yet something in her steps looked sad, like she wasn't just training. She was remembering. Later, when she returned to the room, sweaty and quiet, he looked up and smiled. "You're very fast." She tossed him a towel. "I know," he chuckled. "Still, impressive." She paused. "Do you fight?" He shook his head. "I raid," she frowned. "That's not helpful in war." "Maybe," he replied, "but wars don't always need more weapons. Sometimes they need understanding." The next day, Kale was in the base's small library. Instead of Earth books, he had pulled files about her planet, its history, battles, and culture. He read about her people's honor codes, family structures, and their sacred symbols. When Vera walked in and saw the files, she stopped. "You're studying me?" "No," he said honestly. "I'm studying your world. You already know mine." She tilted her head. "No human ever cared enough to learn ours." He smiled. "Then maybe I'll be the first." Her gaze softened, just slightly. Later. That week, a group of Earth children came to visit the outpost, a peaceful learning exchange. Kale offered to guide them. Vera stayed back, uninterested, until she heard screaming. She ran toward the sound and found Kale kneeling beside a small alien girl, 3 arms, glowing skin, bleeding from the leg. Kale had torn off part of his shirt and was wrapping her wound. 2 Earth guards were hesitating nearby, unsure how to help. Vira stepped in. "Move." She lifted the child like a feather and carried her inside. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned. Later that evening, Kale sat beside her near the outdoor fire pit. "You didn't have to help," he said. "She was a child." "I know," he said softly, but most warriors wouldn't have cared. She looked at him. "You did." "I'm not a warrior," he said, "but I still bleed. So do they." She stared at the flames. For the first time, she said his name. Kale. He looked at her. "You are not what I expected," she said. He smiled gently. "You're not what I feared." One night, during a shared dinner with diplomats, a visiting alien general mocked Kale in front of others. "This is the human who married our strongest. He looks like a leaf that fell from a weak tree." Laughter echoed. Kale said nothing, but Vera stood slowly. Her tone was quiet, but dangerous. "Say it again," she whispered. The general laughed nervously. "Just a joke, warrior." Vera's eyes narrowed. "On my world, jokes are earned, not thrown like stones at those who show respect." No one laughed after that, Dot, when they returned to their room. Kale didn't say a word. Vera looked at him. "You could have answered him." "I could have," Kale said, "but your silence meant more than my words." She studied him for a moment, then said, "You have strength. It's just not in your fists." He smiled. "You're starting to see me." "No," she said slowly. "I'm starting to understand you." That night, as they sat beneath the stars, she asked him something unexpected. "Do you regret being forced to marry me?" He shook his head. "No." "Why not?" He looked up at the sky. "Because I've never learned this much from anyone before." She turned her gaze to him, and for once, she didn't feel like a weapon. She felt seen. A sleek black vessel landed just beyond the trees near the Earth outpost. No noise, no broadcast, no request for permission. Just a name spoken over the wind. Vera. She heard it from the hallway. Kale. Looked up as she froze mid-step. "Someone's here for you?" Her eyes narrowed. "Someone I hoped would never come." It was her former commanding officer, General Nyrick, the one who trained her, the one who believed warriors should never feel, never question, never disobey. His armor was heavier than hers. His presence, colder. He stood by the ship with 2 guards behind him. Vera approached slowly. Kale stayed close behind, silent. "Vera," the general said, "you were the pride of our forces. But now I see you drinking tea, helping humans. Wearing no blade." She didn't answer. He stepped closer. "You were sent here to remind Earth who holds the strength, not to become one of them." Her jaw clenched. "I was sent here to protect peace. You were sent to control the human, not serve beside him like an equal." Kale lowered his head slightly, but did not speak. Nyrick's voice sharpened. "You have one chance. Return now, leave the human, or be stripped of your rank, your command, your name." For a moment, time stopped. Even the wind waited. Then she spoke slowly, clearly. "No." The general's eyes widened. "What?" "I will not return. And I will not obey." "Why?" She turned and looked at Kale, not as an order, not as a duty, but as a choice. "Because he doesn't try to control me. He never needed to be stronger than me. He only needed to be honest." Kale blinked. Nyrek scoffed. "So the great warrior Vera has fallen in love with a soft human?" "No," she said. "I've risen because of one." That night, the tension lingered. They sat by the fire pit, both quiet. The stars above seemed to hold their breath too. Kale finally asked, "Was that hard for you?" "Yes," she replied. "He was once like a father to me." He nodded. "I gave up everything." She added, "Rank, power, my name, maybe." He looked into the fire. "Why would you give all that? For me?" She turned to him. "Because you gave me something I never had." "What?" she whispered. "Freedom." The next morning, Earth's diplomatic team offered her a new title, Honor Guest of Earth. But Vera refused it. "I don't need a new chain," she said. Still, something shifted between her and Kale. That night, she didn't sit across the room. She sat beside him. They ate quietly, side by side, no guards, No orders. Then she said something that caught Kale completely off. "Guard, my people believe names are tied to battles." He nodded. "And mine is tied to books." She smiled slightly. "Maybe that's what makes this work." Kale asked gently, "Do you miss your home?" Vera stared out the window. "No, not anymore. My world has skies like fire. But here, I finally breathe." A few days later, a small alien girl from the earlier visit returned. She ran up to Vera and hugged her leg tightly. Everyone around froze. Even Kale. Vera looked down at the child. "I drew this for you," the girl said, holding out a rough crayon sketch. Vera, with a bright sun behind her and Kale beside her. Smiling, Vera took the paper in her large hand. Her fingers trembled. She had been drawn as something new. Not a warrior, not a weapon, but someone kind. Someone human. That night, as the wind whispered through the base, Kale placed his sleeping mat beside her bed, not because he was told, but because it felt right. And this time, when he lay down, she didn't tell him to move. She whispered, "Good night, Kale." And he whispered, "Good night, Vera." The stars outside flickered softly, as if the galaxy itself had just witnessed something rare. Not power. Not war. But trust. Real. Unexpected and unshakable. Asterisk. The skies turned red at noon. At first, it looked like a sunset arriving too early. Then came the sirens. Unknown ships entering low orbit. Hostile signatures confirmed. Kale rushed to the command center, but Vera was already there standing. At the center of the room, her posture like a blade drawn from its sheath. On the screen, 6 dark alien ships hovered above Earth's outpost zone. No symbols, no messages, only silence. And power. Vera narrowed her eyes. "They're not from Earth. They're from my world, but not my people." Kale stepped beside her. "Then who?" "Rebels," she said coldly. "They believe I betrayed our kind." The base commander turned to her. "They're here for you." "No," Vera said. "They're here to destroy everything I chose." The rebel ships dropped their first warning shot, an energy blast, aimed just short of the outpost walls. The ground shook. Windows cracked. The base lost external power. Earth soldiers scrambled into position, but they were outgunned, outnumbered, and unprepared. Vera didn't wait. She stepped forward and ripped open the weapons locker. Kale followed her. "What are you doing?" "Stopping a war before it begins." "You can't go alone." She paused, turned toward him. And for the first time, he saw something different in her eyes. Fear. Not for herself, but for him. "If I fall," she said, quietly, "promise me, you won't let them say I ran." Kale clenched his fists. "Then don't fall. You're not alone." She blinked. Then smiled, just slightly. Together, they moved to the launch pad. Vera boarded a sleek ground skimmer, Kale at her side in the co-seat. Earth Command tried to protest, but they ignored the orders. In the distance, rebel soldiers dropped from orbit in dark suits, 6-foot beasts with red visors and heavy rifles. Kale whispered, "We're not armed like them." Vera growled, "We don't need to be." As the first squad surrounded a group of Earth medics, Vera leapt from the skimmer and landed like thunder. Her blades were already out. In less than 10 seconds. 3 rebels were down. No mercy. No hesitation. Kale rushed in after her, pulling 2 civilians to safety while laser fire rained around them. He wasn't a soldier, but he didn't freeze. He didn't run. 1 rebel spotted him. Kale had no weapon. The alien raised his rifle. Kale braced for impact, but Vera was faster. She tackled the rebel mid-air, crashing through a wall. The alien dropped his weapon. Vera's armor cracked. Her shoulder bled, but she kept fighting. Kale pulled her back as more rebels closed in. "This is too many." He shouted. She coughed, blood on her lip. Then we fall together. No. Kale growled. We stand together. He slammed a shield generator onto the ground, a backup tool he had hidden earlier. A powerful dome of energy surrounded them just in time as enemy fire lit up the field. Vera looked at him, breathing hard. You learned fast. I learned from the best, he said. Minutes later, Earth's reinforcements finally arrived. Drones. Defense turrets. A small fighter craft. The rebels, seeing the tide turning, began to retreat. But Vera wasn't done. She sprinted toward the fleeing commander, the one who once trained beside her, now wearing the mark of a traitor. You chose. Exile, he hissed. No, she said, raising her blade. I chose freedom. They clashed once then, twice then. The third strike sent his weapon flying. He fell to one knee. Vera stood over him, but she didn't strike. She looked up and saw Kale watching. So she turned and walked away. She was no longer their weapon. She was her own. Back at the outpost, the wounded were being treated. Kale sat beside her, wrapping her arm carefully. She winced. Sorry, he said. She shook her head. You helped me win a war without even lifting a blade. He smiled gently. Not true. I lifted you. Vera stared at him for a long moment. Then she leaned forward and whispered, You were never weak. That night, the stars above the outpost sparkled brighter than usual. Peace had returned, but something deeper had changed. Vera no longer saw herself as a weapon or a symbol. She saw herself as a woman, one who had chosen her path, and at her side, a boy. No, a man, not stronger in body, but in something she had never valued before. Heart. The battlefield was quiet now. The broken walls of the outpost had been patched. The rebel ships had fled into deep space. What remained behind was not just peace, but something far more complicated. Vera stood at the edge of the balcony, overlooking Earth's twilight sky. Her injured arm was wrapped in fresh cloth. Her armor had been removed, replaced with a simple cloak of soft blue earth fabric, gifted by one of the medics she saved. Behind her, Kale stepped out slowly. No weapons. Just 2 mugs of warm tea. He handed one to her. Will your people come back? He asked softly. No, she said. Not after what they saw. He nodded. Because you beat them? She shook her head. No, because I didn't become them. The next day, Earth held a ceremony, not for war, not for politics, but for gratitude. Vera stood beside Kale in front of both human and alien diplomats. Her name had been cleared. Her actions were recognized not just as brave, but as just. She was offered a new title, Peace Guard of Earth, but she refused it with a soft smile. I don't need a new name. I already have someone who calls me by mine, and means it. The audience clapped. Kale blushed. Later, they walked through the gardens outside the outpost, just the two of them. Do you regret marrying me? Kale asked quietly. She stopped walking, then turned toward him. For a long time, I hated the idea of it. I thought it was a punishment, a way to control me, a leash. She reached out and gently touched his chest right over his heart. But you never pulled that leash. I never wanted to, she smiled. And that's exactly why I now choose you. Kale looked up into her eyes. You what? I choose you, she repeated. Not because of orders, not because of peace treaties, but because you gave me something I've never had. What's that? He whispered. Respect and rest. That night, the stars were clearer than ever. They sat beneath them, the silence warm, not empty. Kale leaned his head gently against her shoulder. She didn't push him away. In fact, she pulled him closer. You changed me, she whispered. Kale looked up. How? You made me want to stay. In the weeks that followed, stories of their stand against the rebels spread across space. Soldiers and diplomats on both sides began to speak differently about humans. Not weak, not soft, but something else. Something uncheckable. One morning, Vera surprised everyone. She walked into Earth's embassy in full ceremonial armor, stood before the Galactic Council's emissaries, and said, "I was forced to marry a human. I accepted it with anger. But I returned today to say I would marry him again, not for duty, not for peace, but because he is mine, and I am his." The room fell silent. One alien delegate whispered to another, "This is why you don't underestimate Earth." Back at the outpost, Kale was planting a tree beside the training grounds. It was small, with silver leaves, something she had described from her homeworld. "Thought you'd like something from your planet," he said. She stood there, arms crossed, pretending not to be moved. "I don't belong to any world anymore," she said. He looked up. "Then where do you belong?" She stepped closer. "Wherever you are." Kale didn't speak. He just took her hand, and she let him. Asterisk